So what I want to talk about today is Emacs. Emacs is installed on the Unix servers. So let's connect to the Unix servers. You can follow along if you like, or you can just listen to the video. So here I am on Prometheus, and I got a lot less messages this time than I did last time. That's suspicious. I'm going to change directory into the directory that I use for this course.
We're not seeing updates on your screen sharing. Is it paused?
No, but what I can do is I can stop it and restart it. Do you now have an updated screen?
Yes, thank you.
Let me know if it doesn't update properly. Is it updating now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know. I don't know what I can't tell what's happening, and I don't know how that differs from how I was sharing before.
I think it's just a Zoom bug, but it's fine now.
Okay, well, let me know if there are any more Zoom bugs. So, here I am in my examples directory. It's empty. I want to create a file to edit, right? I can type emacs and the name of the file that I want to edit, right? If there was an existing file, I could type, well, let's make an existing file. So I can make a file using something called touch, which updates it to, it also updates the time at which it was last modified, which can be useful, believe it or not. So let's edit that empty file. So I type emacs hello.c and I get an Emacs screen. And this top part, you can see my cursor, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we can.
This top part here is a window, right? This thing here is a status bar. And this thing down at the bottom is called the mini buffer, right? And commands go in the mini buffer. Text that you're editing or playing around with goes into the window. And the status bars tell you information about what's happening, right? So this tells you that you've not saved it. This tells you the name of the file that you're editing, how much of it you can see, which line you're at, and then this is something called the mode, right? And it says I've opened it in C mode. It opened it in C mode because the file was called .c. And all C source files are named something.c, right? Or .h, but we'll not worry about .h until you've learned a little bit more about C. Right, so this is a C file. Let's do hello world in C. I need to do the equivalent of an import which is an include, right? So I include stdio.h. Notice that it's in angle brackets. One of my presentations talks about why it's in angle brackets and not in quotes. Quotes is an alternative. I have a main function. Notice I don't have classes, and I don't have public static, and I don't have all of that kind of thing. I just have plain methods, which we call functions. And the correct invocation for main in C is that, right? And then we use the printf function to print out strings. Printf is very powerful. Printf allows you to format data in some very interesting ways, very useful ways. It's very powerful. But we're just using it to output a string. I can use my cursor control keys to move around this buffer. And when I type, I just type into the buffer, right? Nothing special. In the right terminal emulator, Emacs color codes C files, just like it color codes, just like Eclipse and BlueJ color coded Java files. And it will do electric indentation for you. Right? So as you type, it will indent for you. Right? It won't do auto completion, unlike Emacs, unlike Eclipse. Right? That's one thing that Eclipse has over Emacs. Now, in Emacs, all of the commands, well, there is a menu, but you can't pick the menu with your cursor, because your cursor doesn't really work. This cursor doesn't really work inside the terminal window. There is a way of getting at those menu items. If you were running it in a graphical environment, you would be able to use the menus. The graphical environment is a little difficult to set up, and I don't remember how to get to the menus here from the keyboard. So all of the things that we do all of the ways in which we edit are keyboard driven. So we go through the keyboard to do interesting things to this file, right? And we can do a lot of interesting things to this file. The keys are usually either control keys, so I typed control and X to get that, right? I'm going to type control G. If you type control G enough times, it will cancel whatever you're trying to do if you're halfway through doing something. Alt and a key, Alt X will do us, is called meta X. and is written M minus X, right? So when you see keyboard shortcuts written down, you'll say either C minus and then a letter, which means control in that letter, or M minus X, M minus letter, and that means Alt and that letter. Another way of getting the Alt, the meta, is to type escape and then the key. And I have a tendency to type escape and then the key because the keyboard that I first worked on when I was a grad student and used Emacs a lot did not have a meta key, didn't have an Alt key. It was a very old terminal from the late 60s, early 70s, something like that. So when I talk about keystrokes, I'm going to talk about control letter, right, and meta letter. And I'm going to go through some of these quite quickly. Let me sit up so I can look at the cheat sheet that I have of what I need to do at the same time as I type with you. If I type meta X, I get the ability to type in a command, right? So here I could type a command, and everything in Emacs is a command. And so all of the control sequences that we type are shortcuts for a command, right? I can get at all of the functionality of Emacs through meta X and a command name, right? It will take some parameters, and there are various ways of giving functions, the commands, parameters. Most of the time you won't want to do that. There are a couple of commands that I'm going to show you. There are literally thousands of commands that you can perform in Emacs. If you want to edit a file, there is almost certainly a command that allows you to edit the file. Emacs has been around since the early 80s and is overdeveloped, right? So it can do all kinds. You can read your mail in Emacs, which I used to do at one time a lot. Oh, and if I type meta X and then the name of a command, if I hit tab, it will provide me with a list, or it will auto-complete as much as it can, right, for the commands. So if you can't remember, if you can only remember the beginning of a command, hit tab, and it will auto-complete it or give you a list of alternatives.
Simon, when I do Alt X on I'm on a Mac too. When I do like Option X, it does like a squiggly equals. And when I do Shift Option X, which is supposed to do Alt, I get a period.
I don't know what's happening with your keyboard, so instead use Escape X. See if that works for you.
Oh, that works.
Okay, so I don't know how your keyboard is mapped. There seems to be something funky about how your keyboard is mapped. I must
Hey,
admit.
Simon.
Yeah?
I'm not even able to log in.
Okay, what's the problem with logging in?
My password won't work. And I've been using the correct password.
So this is Faith, right?
Yeah.
FS Maya?
Yeah.
Oh, Bobbins. It wants my password, not your password. Right. Try the password capital P A S S 5 capital W O R D.
Access denied. And that's what I've been getting when I've been typing in my password correctly anyway.
Are you typing just FS Mayor and not FS Mayor at smcm.edu?
I'm doing fsmeyer at login.cs.
On a Mac.
No, PC.
Okay, so in PuTTY.
Yeah.
You need to just do login.cs.smcm.edu as the host, and then it will prompt you for your username and password.
Oh, am I doing it wrong?
Yeah.
Oh. All right, so
So
let's close that then.
So in the host box, you type login.cs.smcm.edu, pick SSH, and pick connect. If you hit save, that'll save the settings so you don't have to remember them again.
Yeah, I already have that and I'm trying to log in PuTTY.
Right. I unfortunately can't show you PuTTY because my Windows computer is stuck in Upper Marlboro. The video from last.
Now it worked.
Okay. Now type PASSWD and change your password. You can use the password that you used last time. It doesn't have to be a new password.
How do I change the password?
You type at the command line, you type PASSWD. It'll prompt you for your old password and then twice for your new password.
Okay, now it worked.
Okay. So now just emacs a hello.c file and you should be able to get this and follow along.
Yeah.
So one thing that I can do is I can quit Emacs, right? And if I want to quit Emacs, I type Control X, Control X, Control C. It prompts me to ask me if I want to save the file. I say yes. It gets out of it, right? So that's how I quit Emacs. If I use up arrows, I can get back my command to emacs hello.c, right? I can just write it out by using Control X, Control W, right? That will prompt me for a file name to write it out to, so that's save as. If I accidentally type Control Z, then it stops Emacs, right? And Control Z is something that you type on PCs quite a lot. So you might type that by accident. I think it's undo. You can get Emacs back at the command line by just typing FG. You can see how it says %1 stopped emacs.hello. That means it's put it into the background. It's still running, but it's not the job that you're interacting with. Typing FG makes it the job you're interacting with. Some convenient keyboard shortcuts for getting places are Control E takes you to the end of the line. Control A takes you to the beginning of the line. I suppose it should be Control B for beginning and Control E for end. But if you remember, Control A, first letter of the alphabet, Control E, end. Meta less than sign. And remember to type the shift to get meta less than sign. So meta shift less than sign takes you to the beginning. Meta greater than sign takes you to the end of the file.
I'm sorry, this is probably a dumb question, but what is the meta key again?
Alt
I see.
or escape.
Okay, so this would vary between computer?
If Alt doesn't work for you, then you might want to use escape.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now I've typed a whole bunch of garbage in. I used meta less than to get to the beginning, right? I can scroll down by page using Control V. So that will get me down a page. Alt V gets me up a page. So if I don't want to scroll if I don't want to scroll line by line, I can scroll by pages using V. Control V to go down, Meta V to go up. Control something is the usual thing. Meta something is very frequently the less usual thing that's related to the control thing. If I decide I want to center my page on this FG here, I can type Control L, and that becomes the central line in my window. So let's get rid of this text. To cut and paste, since I don't have a mouse to cut and paste, I can set a mark, and that's control space. And I can then move the cursor and it selects the text. And I can use any cursor control keys I like to select the text. So that's selected everything from the mark to the end of the buffer. And if I do control W for wipe, then I get rid of that text. If I wipe something by mistake, or if I want to move it around, let's say I want to move that text up here, I can do control Y for yank. Right? And that brings the text back from something called the yank buffer. If I've deleted several different things using wipe or control K, as we'll see later on, then I can go back through my history by using meta Y. So let's delete some stuff. Control K will delete a line. Right? So I control K'd a bunch of stuff. If I control Y, it brings back that stuff. If I do meta Y, why doesn't it do? Oh, it's probably doing it. I just don't see it. Meta Y will replace that text with the text from control Y, meta Y, brings back the previous or the previous to the previous or the previous to the previous thing. Kind of like undo, but not quite. So let's get rid of this text again.
Simon, do you have a convenient document with all of these shortcuts that you could put on Blackboard?
I do. I have 3 convenient documents. Let's talk about those, right? So I wrote out an explanation of all of these things, which is worth reading because it explains stuff rather than just giving you, for this, do that, right? It explains why and how to remember the key sequences. And that's at the end of the bumper book. So it's kind of the very last thing in the bumper book. And the bumper book is under collected resources on Blackboard. Under tools, I will post 2 cheat sheets. And most of the control sequences I'm talking about are in the cheat sheets. Not all of them. Particularly not the things about compiling C, about writing C, right? So those are not in the cheat sheets, but they are at the end of the bumper book. Is that good enough, Harry?
Yes, thank you.
How do we run these programs?
How do you run these programs? How do you mean?
How do we test them? Like, can we run them through Emacs?
You can certainly run them through Emacs. Let's do that next if you like.
Sweet.
So I need to compile my program first, right? This is done automatically by Eclipse. In the Unix environment, we separate out compilation from running just because we might want to compile our program quite a lot and only run it infrequently, especially if we have a big program. If I type meta-x and then the command word compile, which is easy enough to remember, it gives me a line make -k, right? Compile command make -k. Make is a utility that I can use to give instructions on how to compile big programs. Not compiling a big program. I'm only compiling a little program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type the name of the executable that I want, and that's compile. No.c. So this isn't make minus k compile.c. This is make minus k compile. And what that will do is it will automatically look for programs, files called compile.c, compile.f for Fortran, compile.l, compile.c++, right? And try to find something that it can make an executable from, right? So make minus k compile, oh, I don't mean compile, sorry, I mean hello, right? The name of the .c file without the .c extension. It prompts me to save files because I want to save files before I compile, and then it gives me this compilation window, right? And in the compilation window, let me change into the compilate, splits the screen, right? So now I have two windows which are each different buffers. So there's a distinction between buffers, some of which may be visible at any given point, some of which might not be visible, and windows, which are things that appear on the screen. I can switch between windows with Control X O. Control X O for other. Control X O for other. Swaps me back between the windows. So let's go into this just to highlight some things. So that's my make command. This is CC, the C compiler, right? The file that I want to compile, and then -O, the name of the executable I want to create, the program that I want to create, right? Hello.c is not directly executable, but hello is. And then compilation finished. No errors. So I don't have any errors in my program. To run the program, I could leave Emacs and run the program outside Emacs, but it's really inconvenient to keep doing that, right? So I can type meta-x shell, right? Because we call a command line a shell, meta-x shell, and that gives me a command line prompt inside Emacs. And now if I type // and the name of my program, I have to type / so it knows to look in the current directory for the program. / hello gives me hello world and then another prompt. I've forgotten to put in the character that says go to a new line. If I type Control X B, that switches to a different buffer. And I could type in the name of a buffer here, but it says the default is hello.c, which is what I want. Let's go to hello.c and put in the \n, which means new line. Meta-x compile, make hello, I got to save it. It's made it. Control X B *shell, run the program, and now it does what I want it to do. Right, so I can do a lot of, if I can remember the command sequences, which are not difficult to remember if you use them fairly frequently, and they are actually named sensibly. If you understand, I explain why they're named what they're named in the bumper book. I explain how to remember them. Control X B to get me back to hello.c. Let's make a syntax error. All right, so I've forgotten my semicolon. Meta-x compile Notice it's remembered the name of the thing that I'm going to compile so I don't have to type it out each time. I need to save it. Now I have an error. In a relatively big program, it's inconvenient to go down and find line 5. So that says hello.c, line 5, character 1, error, expected semicolon before curly braces. So it says, I'm expecting a semicolon, I didn't get it, I got a curly brace. If I type Control X and then the backtick character, which is in the top left of your keyboard underneath the tilde, it will automatically take me to the line of the error and will move the compilation buffer along to that error message. So you could see it moved my cursor in the C window, and it moved the cursor in the compilation window. I can put my semicolon back in. And if I have lots of errors, I can hit Control X, backtick. It's complaining because there aren't any errors, any more errors. But Control X backtick gets you through all of your syntax errors. Of course, my suggestion is you only write a little bit of your C program at a time so that you're only likely to have one syntax error at a time. So does that explain how to does that explain how to just looking at chat. Does that explain how to compile programs and run programs in Emacs?
Would you go through the process of running the program one more time,
Yep.
Simon?
Meta X, I'm not in the right window. Meta X shell, right? And then / and the name of the program that I want to run. I can do anything I want in this window, right? It's a proper, almost fully functional shell. It won't do less, right? So it won't do screen interaction stuff, but it will do almost any other kind of shell stuff I want to do. So you can keep the shell running inside Emacs. You can CD. You can do all of that kind of stuff. Notice when I do an ls, here's my C source code file. Here's my executable file that I ran by saying /hello, because I need to say look in the current directory, don't look along something called the path, right? The current directory isn't in the path. Don't ever put the current directory in the path because you will make mistakes if you do that. I have learnt the hard way. There are two other files. There's this hello.c tilde file, and that's the last version of hello.c that I ran. I'm sorry, I saved. And then there's this file here, which is really, it's printed out as tick hello.c, tick hash hello.c hash tick, but it's really called hash hello.c hash. And that's a list of all the keystrokes since the last time that I ran Emacs. Now let's see if I can, oh, bobbins. How am I going to crash Emacs? I typed Control D there to exit the shell. And so the shell is now dead. If you get disconnected from the server while you're editing your file, that keystroke recovery file, pound hello.cpound, will have stored all of your keystrokes up until the point where it crashed. Now, I can make it crash, but then the share window will disappear. So I'm not going to do that. But I am going to show you how to recover that file. So we're going to change to hello.c. If that disaster were to happen, then I could type metax recover file. It would ask me for a recovery file. And I can type yes, and then it would recover all of those keystrokes for me. Right? So it's almost impossible to lose stuff in Emacs unless you actually go out of your way to lose stuff. Right? It won't restore the kill ring.
I had one a little while ago, but it's gone now. Where did it go? Like, is it because I saved the file or something?
Yeah.
Okay, so it disappears after you save.
Well, it's there because I obviously changed the file. That will be automatically deleted when you save the file. Hello.c tilde will be there all the time. It will just get updated to the last version that you saved.
Okay.
Right? I don't know that hello.c tilde is all that useful anymore. It used to be useful. There are reasons why version control systems make it less useful now. Are
you going to talk about FileZilla, or is that later?
how much time do I have?
It's 12:50.
Let's do that at 1 o'clock. It won't take long. Let's say I have indented my program badly. It's hard to indent this program badly because there's only one thing that needs to be indented. If I select the whole buffer, right, by going to the beginning of the buffer, hitting control space, going to the end of the buffer, I highlight the whole buffer, or highlight a piece of text that's not properly indented, and I type metax indent region. We call the thing that's highlighted the region. It will indent the region, and it tells me I can do that by doing control meta backslash, but you won't ever remember control meta backslash. I don't remember control meta backslash. What else have I got to say? Oh yeah. If I want to make, if I've got a split screen and I want to make one window out of it, I can type Control X 0. I'm sorry, that was not what I meant to do. If I type Control X 1, that makes the current window the whole of the window. It gets rid of the split. Control X2 splits the window into two, but they're both the same buffer. So if I do Control XO for other, Control XB for buffer, and I can go to another buffer. If I can't remember what all my buffers are, I can do Control X and then just B. I'm sorry, Control X, Control B, will give me a list of all my buffers. And I can go into that and I can just hit return on the line that I want, and it will take me to that buffer. That's Control XB. Just a useful thing to maybe remember. Maybe it's almost time. Let's go to hello.c, Control X1 to make it the only thing on the screen. If I type Control H for help, and then T, I obviously did the tutorial before, it gives me a tutorial. And this goes through it goes through at length most of the things that I've talked about. If you follow it down, it edits the text as you move through it. Right, so you can, if you want a tutorial, you can go through the tutorial. Control XB to switch back to the other buffer. Control HM gives me information about this buffer. I can, it tells me some, Control X meta, Control meta V will allow me to scroll through that window without actually changing window, but I'm going to change window. Control XO into this, and it gives me a whole bunch of information about the specific bindings of the C mode. Right, so it tells me what Control CD does, what Control C does. Let's look at Control C. Let's highlight a region, Control space, and then move my cursor. Control C, comments the whole region. I think if I comment it again, it will MetaX undo undoes the last thing. I can't remember how you uncomment region. There may not be a keyboard shortcut for that. So it tells me a lot about key bindings. It won't tell me about the fundamental key bindings. It tells me about the ones specific to this mode. There's another source of information which is called info. And that tells me about a lot about Unix stuff, a lot about emacs, right? So I can go to the emacs FAQ. I can go to emacs FAQ. Here's the emacs FAQ. How do I go back? Anyway, I can navigate that window to get more information about all kinds of stuff, right? So if you were an advanced Emacs user, Control HI would help you to learn more about the environment. I can program Emacs to do all of these things, and there are modes that have been programmed by people cleverer than I to do these various things. C mode is just a programmed version of Emacs. There was something else I wanted to show you. Yeah, Dured mode. So if I edit, instead of editing a file, I edit a directory, I get this dirred mode. See, it says at the bottom, dirred by name. And that allows me to do things, well, it allows me to navigate, right, by just selecting the folder and then hitting return. More importantly, I can delete files. If I just press D, it will mark the file for deletion. Look over here, that little D, and highlight it in red. It won't actually delete it because that would be too dangerous. I have to type X to execute, and it will ask me if I really want to delete the files that I'm asking to delete. And I'm going to say yes, that deletes my executable file. Right, so dirred mode is kind of useful. Control XK kills a buffer, gets rid of a buffer. If you really insist on not using emacs, then you will want to know how to compile your program at the command line. So there's another editor called Nano, which is self-explanatory, right? It has a menu at the bottom, but you have to keep going in and out of it to get things done. If I type CC or GCC -O hello, well, let's just type CC hello.c. That will compile my hello.c program, but it compiles it to a file called a.out, always. That's not terribly useful, but if I type -O and then the name, then a name, it will compile it to that hello. So that will compile the output file. Right, if you really insist on compiling at the command line. I strongly suggest that you get used to emacs. Right, it is a very powerful tool once you have remembered some of those command sequences. The bumper book explains the names of the command sequences and how they came about so that it makes it easier to remember them. Right. All right. Any questions? Anything I didn't cover that you'd have liked me to have covered? All right. Let's stop that recording there.